Okay, and the soliloquy is when the actor turns and addresses the audience directly, okay? And the other people, especially if it's in a live setting, it works pretty well in the film because they cut away to it. But the film also kind of tries to stay true to the original production of Shakespeare, which was that the characters would just have to, the other characters who were on stage would just freeze and pretend that they can't hear what the character is saying, okay? So it directs the audience. We know the character's innermost thoughts, and it's kind of the equivalent of a voiceover. We use that all the time in film and TV. You'll have a narrative voiceover who cues the audience into information that the characters don't know about. Okay, so as we read the as we read the play while we're listening to the audiobook today, we'll get a few minutes in today. Again, like I said, you want to take notes right in your book because you won't get through managing this longer piece without having those notes right in your book. So again, hopefully you brought your pencils if you're trying to keep your books pristine, but like I said, I think the bookstore is going to rip you off anyway. Okay? So at least you want to be marking pages for yourself and noticing things. That's why we watch the film first, so that as we read the play, you can notice things about that are foreshadowing different events that will occur in the future, and then you can start to connect the dots more, because that's where you can really grow an appreciation of Shakespeare, is when you know what happens, and you go back through and you're like, wow, he's setting this up and weaving this together already at this point, all right? And he just manages it through all 5. The other thing that I wanted to talk about too, your book gives you a little bit of an introduction to the theater of Shakespeare. And what we talked about is that Shakespeare had his own theater. It was called the Globe Theater. And it was like the equivalent, people didn't have forms of entertainment like we do right now, okay? So it was a special occasion. People got to go to it on their free time. It was affordable for everyone. So commoners would attend, and so would the upper classes, okay? The difference would be in the setup. So basically you have a big kind of circular theater, just like an arena, where the more expensive seats are covered by the roof, okay, so that if it rains or something to that effect, then you don't get rained on, okay, and you also have seats that you get to sit on in the upper circular, in the upper seat. London rebuilt the Globe Theater because the Globe Theater burned to the ground because, I mean, there wasn't electricity, and you had, roofs that were made of thatch roofs, which are made of basically of straw and hay. So it was a lot of, and there wasn't like emergency exits, and a lot of fire safety came out of the early drama. So it was really common for theaters to burn down with everyone in it. But a lot of playhouses who are really kind of interested in revitalizing the plays of the past will go through and they'll make a reproduction of the original theaters. So yeah, there's ones in the United States. The reproduction of Shakespeare's Globe Theater is actually made to such an extent that they didn't use like modern nails. They used like wood pegs, just like they did when the Globe Theater was originally built. The only thing that they had to update was, of course, the fire code didn't allow the thatch roof anymore without having some fire sustainable material underneath it, and it has a sprinkler system as well as emergency exits, which the original theater didn't have. But other than that, they made it exactly like the original theater. They got. The other kind of aspect too that's important to know, so you had the covered seats, okay, that were in the circular, and those were the good seats, and those were for the upper classes. They cost more, but that would have been irrelevant because it just would have been part of the class that you're in. This is where you get to go sit. The commoners would have stood for the entire length of the play in the pit, so to speak, okay, on the ground level. And the duration of Shakespeare's plays, this one usually runs about 3 hours. Othello does. Hamlet can run about 4 to 5 hours. Okay, so people really, I mean, it was an event, and it was more participatory too than plays are today. The villains, people usually bring kind of their rotten food with them that were left over, and they would peg either like the clown, like the comedic character with it, or like Iago at the end of this play would have just been pelted with a bunch of like rotten fruit and things like that to that effect. That's exactly it. So that, and then if it rained, the show went on. So they stood in the rain. Okay, it just was something that happened, and it's endemic of Elizabethan society.